I've experienced my fair share of Hawaii tourists working in retail and at a rental car company respectively. So it's safe to say I know a good tourist from a bad one. But before I go on my rant, it's important to clarify that Hawaii locals have always had this weird love-hate relationship with tourists. On the one hand, we don't like that tourists make the beaches, hiking trails, and roads more congested. And on the flip side, for better or for worse, tourism is the backbone of Hawaii's economy, and we need travelers visiting on a consistent basis in order for the local businesses and people here to thrive. And living through a global pandemic has only highlighted those conflicted feelings us locals have towards tourists. Honestly, it was nice not having to deal with insane traffic and crowded beaches, but I also know a lot of people who lost their jobs and struggled to make ends meet during this difficult period. I may be speaking out of turn, but from my perspective, most locals really don't mind or even think about tourists, and we're used to millions of them visiting the islands every year. Wearing loud-ass aloha shirts from the ubiquitous ABC stores, attending tacky luau's, or renting Mustang convertibles, these things don't make you a bad tourist. I mean, it's your vacation, and who am I to tell you how to spend it? However, I believe these 5 things are absolute no-nos while you're here in Hawaii. I know these can be applied to most bucket list vacation destinations and are just plain old common sense. But whether you're an experienced traveler or not, my whole goal for this episode is for you to have a great time, just not at the expense of the land and the people who call this place home. Let's get into the 5 things that make a bad Hawaii tourist. Bad tourists don't leave the friendly confines of their resort. Don't be that tourist who decides to never leave the comforts of the resort hotel or refuses to try anything new. You can eat at Cheesecake Factory anytime, but it's the mom and pop establishments and local businesses who really need your support and where your hard-earned dollars will have a much bigger impact. Go visit the local farmers market, eat at family-owned and operated eateries like Helena's and Alicia's in Kalihi. Hell, even Zippy's is a better alternative than the Colonel and the Clown. All I'm saying is support local as much as possible. Please and thank you. Bad tourists don't treat the land and wildlife with reverence. By all means, enjoy the public parks, beaches, and hiking trails, but try to leave the area in a better condition than how you found it. As for the wildlife, here's a good rule of thumb. Don't touch anything. Don't be that guy who lifts a honu out of the water and his only piss poor excuse being, I didn't know. Come on, man. Oh shoot, one more thing. Don't take lava rocks as souvenirs unless you want the volcano goddess Pele to haunt you for eternity. Nah, I'm just kidding. Or am I? Bad tourists don't realize the pace here is a bit slower. I don't have any objective proof that life moves slower here other than I've lived on the mainland and the way we drive, walk, talk, and our overall mentality leans more toward the tortoise than the hare. So be patient, drive with aloha, meaning don't drive like a complete maniac, and know that the way of life doesn't operate at breakneck speeds as compared to where you're from. Bad tourists don't care to learn about the history of Hawaii. No, I'm not saying you need a PhD in Hawaiian history to be able to travel here. What I'm saying is you'll have a better understanding of Hawaiian culture and Native Hawaiian specifically through books or even doing a quick Google search. There are important historical events such as the arrival of the first European Captain James Cook in 1778 to the arrival of Christian missionaries in the 1820s, bringing with them diseases, wiping out a good portion of the Native Hawaiian population, to the overthrow of the last monarch, Queen Liliuokalani. Once you have a basic understanding of how Native Hawaiians have been historically screwed over, you'll have more empathy to why they're protective of the land and have a healthy skepticism toward outsiders. If you're on Oahu, I implore you to visit places like the Bishop Museum and the Iolani Palace, as they're excellent resources to learn more about the history and culture of Hawaii. Bad tourists are disrespectful jackasses. When I used to work in the service industry, I experienced some downright rude visitors expecting us to grovel at their feet simply because they spent thousands of dollars on their Hawaii vacation. Here's a news flash, and this may sound harsh, but a majority of people who work at hotels, restaurants, and retail stores could give a damn whether or not tourists have a jolly good time. We look at it as a job, nothing more and nothing less. We work to feed our families, pay rent, and keep the lights on, as is the case with most Americans. And though a lot of locals don't embody the stereotypical aloha spirit you see all the time in movies, if you're nice to us, we'll give you the same treatment back. Especially during this cocoa pandemic, please be mindful that the people in the service industry don't make the rules. We're just doing our jobs and trying our best to follow the state's mandates in these strange times, so don't make our lives more difficult by refusing requests, no matter how inconvenient you deem them to be. Well, that's it. Those are the 5 things bad Hawaii tourists do. If you're thinking, wow, being a good
Hawaii tourist isn't that hard.
That's because it isn't hard at all. Us locals understand tourism is a huge part of our economy, and we're generally pretty welcoming. As long as you support local, respect the land and wildlife, understand that life moves a bit slower, take the time to learn about the history and culture, and not be a complete douchebag, you'll see how truly special this place can be. Well, that's gonna be it for me. I appreciate you guys watching. See you in the next one.